Roy says, defining cumulative towards values. When setting towards values like feeling healthy, how do we balance subjective choice with objective requirements? Should the rules for feeling healthy work like a minimum combination lock? For example, I might get 7 hours of sleep, but eat burgers every day so I can truly decide to feel healthy without a combination of sleep and nutrition. And if rules don't all need to occur simultaneously, to what extent should they still be cumulative to avoid gaming the system? Uh, I like the question, and it presupposes a couple of things. Remember, the quality of your life is expressed not in the quality of your thoughts, that plays a huge role, but it plays a role because it leads to the quality of your feelings. You experience life, you don't think life. Follow? So when you are looking at what has to happen for you to have a higher quality of life, what you're really looking for is, how do I engineer a better quality of experience / feeling? Now, we filter this through the 4 levels of experience, or categories of experience. Familiar with that? Yeah. Yeah. A class 1 experience is really what you're aiming at. Class 1 experience feels good, is good for you, good for others, good for the greater good. Sex is a great example of that, providing it's mutually beneficial. If you have a class 2 experience doesn't feel good, but it is actually good for you. Good for others, good for the greater good. That's something like exercise to start, forming new habits that you are struggling with or goes against your current familiarity or comfort zone. Then we get class 3 experience. Now, this is where it applies to what Roy said. What you don't want to be doing is gaming the system for a class 3 experience. In other words, things that feel good, but aren't actually good for you, good for others, good for the greater good. Smoking, if you ask a smoker, right? Smokers don't actually understand that smoking doesn't feel good, right? What actually feels good is the elimination of wanting a cigarette. Let me say that again. See, when you are craving a cigarette, you're in an uncomfortable feeling, correct? I need a cigarette. So when we have a cigarette, we think, oh, that's great. What we're actually feeling great about is we're no longer craving. But the brain doesn't tell you that. The brain links the actual pleasure to the cigarette. In other words, what you seem to be fixing the problem rather than understanding that the real problem was the craving. So, but a class 3 example is something that probably feels good in the moment, but isn't good for you long term. Like 3 McDonald's milkshakes. Right. So the game here with modules 10 and 11 is, how do we set up the game of life so that we can feel better more of the time and worse less of the time? That's the game. Because if we raise our consciousness, tying into module 12, the higher your level of consciousness, the more you're associated with what? Inner world or outer world? Which one? I can lip read. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, inner world. Now, in the inner world, is it possible to starve? In the inner world, is it possible to face physical danger? No. Right? How do you kill a spirit? You can't. So when it comes to feeling great, the higher your levels of consciousness, usually the less things that bother you in the outer world. You follow? The easier access you have to joy, because you don't sweat the small stuff that you do down at the lower levels of consciousness, right? Or in Buy Me, where you're trying to control things that really can't be controlled. Right? So when we're creating our rules for our towards values, it does really want to be a menu, not an excuse for drinking milkshakes. And your heart knows the difference. but I really want to feel healthy. So I want to create a rule that says, yeah, when I get, yeah, more than 6 hours sleep, I'll feel healthy. When I step outside and breathe some deep, clean air and look at the sun, I feel healthy. When I put my bare feet in grass, I feel healthy. Stuff that's easy to do. You don't want to say, yeah, well, when I supersize my meal, I feel healthy, because your heart's going to go bullshit. So there's, you're not it's impossible to game the system, because the universe is always listening, right? And your heart doesn't lie. But do set yourself up to win, to give you the best rules you can, so that you have easy access to things that make you feel how you want to feel in accordance with your hierarchy of values. See, if you want to feel love and connection, and your rules for that is, oh, whenever I hug my son, and your son leaves to go to university, right? You've just set yourself up to fail. It could be one of the things, but if it's the only thing, or things like that which are dependent on stuff you can't control, you're always going to be trying to adapt your life into scenarios that allow you to feel better and avoid not feeling like crap. And then you can't walk an authentic path. So from a perspective of setting up the rules, you can have things like, I want to hug my son. Of course you want to feel love when you hug your son. But you also, when your son goes to university, you better have some other rules that don't require you to call him back from university to feel love. Make sense?